Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all my students are okay. Well, if the answer is yes, that is pretty fine. I am more concerned about your health. Alright, so at the same time, I also expect that you must have done the activities which I suggested you or I asked you to do during the last session, that was session number 23. And I still remember that I had a talk on this in detail. While wrapping up the session, I said, right, what is possible when you're doing some sort of activity? It is possible that you have to refer to some particular session or sessions. In fact, I deliberately gave you those activities because what happens during the proceedings of the semester, we say the things, and the things, if not practiced, are forgotten. I don't want you to forget the things. As I told you in the beginning, when we started this semester, I still remember I said what you need to do in this particular course is to practice a lot. What happens most of the time, we listen, we forget. But it's very important when you do the thing, you understand the thing. Maximum 20 minutes are there in the classroom. If the teacher is only speaking, if the instructor is only concerned with the speaking, I'm sure after 20 minutes all the students will lose their concentration and interest. Same is the case so far as virtual learning is concerned, or virtual training is concerned, or virtual teaching is concerned. Whatever name you can give, it's okay. When we are online, when we are learning virtually, this mode is rather more important in the sense, so far as the activities are concerned, that without doing activities, it is not possible that we can understand the concept. And especially when we talk about phonological concepts or the phonological rules, what we need to do is that we have to get ourselves involved in various activities. And that is the reason, my dear students, that time and again I give you some sort of activity which you need to do. Sometimes it is written activity, sometimes it is based on spoken version. I want you, whenever I give you this kind of activity, that you have to record your voice. You have to record your voice. You must. Without recording your voice, it is not possible for you to understand your own pronunciation, which is based on primarily the phonemes of English. Without understanding all the phonemes of English, it is not possible for you to understand phonological rules. Phonology of English, based on certain rules. We are talking about segments, we are talking about suprasegment, or segmental phonology, or suprasegmental phonology. So two parts are available. The first part is that we have to understand segmental phonology. If we need to understand segmental phonology, okay, then it is possible that there is a need of suprasegmental phonology. If the first part, that is segmental phonology, that is not touched, that is not understood, it becomes very difficult for us, for the learners, to understand the suprasegmental phonology or phonological rules. So time and again I ask you to do some sort of activities, and this time again I am suggesting that you must have done all the activities which I gave you, assigned you during session number 23. So anyways, I'm sure that you must have done it, and rather you might have done it. So welcome to session number 24. This is session number 24. and we are engaged in understanding phonology of English. Last time, I hope you remember that we were very much concerned with the role played by articulators, and we talked about 10 different articulators, 7 major articulators and 3 more. We try to understand their role. Definitely we try to understand through narration, we try to understand through examples, we try to understand through diagrams. Now let's see what we have in session number 24. So welcome all to session number 24. Well, today our topics are phonology, physics and physiology of speech, and speech organs. So 3 areas we'll be talking about. We shall try to understand them: phonology, physics and physiology of speech, and speech organs. But remember, each time when I use the word phonology, or maybe I used the word phonetics, I always try to bring different dimensions so that you may understand. I mean, sometimes I give you one dimension, sometimes the other, and sometimes the other one. So same is the case. There are certain examples, I try to bring to make you understand. So today's topics are phonology, physics and physiology of speech, and speech organs. Well, if somebody at this stage asks you, what in fact is phonology? During this session, if somebody puts you a question, what in fact is phonology? So remember, your answer should be like this: phonology is the study of the sound system of languages. And then we can say phonology of English. But for the moment, this is sufficient answer for understanding's sake, that phonology is the study of the sound system of languages. Right? Sound system of languages. Sound system of languages, I'm saying. But when we try to understand phonetics, we said that phonetics primarily studies the production, transmission and perception of speech sounds. Do you remember? But this time I am saying phonology is the study of the sound system of languages. And at one extreme, phonology is concerned with anatomy and physiology. When I say anatomy and physiology, what strikes your mind? Of course, the organs of speech. When I talk about anatomy and physiology, what strikes your mind? The organs of speech and how we learn to use them. This is what we discussed in detail. We tried to analyze in detail during session number 23, when I was talking about the role of articulators, the speech organs. So that's why I'm saying that at one extreme, phonology is concerned with anatomy and physiology. And to understand this, I would like to add that the organs of speech and how we learn to use them. Alright? Organs of speech, different organs of speech are there, and how we learn to use them. And when I say phonology of English, so what happens? We apply the same to the understanding of the role of speech organs and how we use them in accordance with the requirement of phonemes of English. Okay? And at the same time, my dear students, at another extreme, there was one extreme, anatomy and physiology, but here, at another extreme, phonology shades into sociolinguistics as we consider social attitudes to features of sound such as accent and intonation. If I elaborate, or if I don't elaborate, I'm sure that some of you already know what I'm saying. At another extreme, phonology shades into sociolinguistics as we consider social attitudes to features of sound such as accent and intonation. I want you to see some of our videos. Rather, I'm suggesting you that go to YouTube and download some of the videos based on posh English, and you will come to know that there is a big difference in between the simple English that is spoken by the common British people and the English which is known as posh English speakers. There are certain variations. So that's why I'm saying at another extreme, phonology shades into sociolinguistics as we consider social attitudes to features of sound such as accent and intonation. I would refer to one English drama written by George Bernard Shaw, The Pygmalion, and I would also suggest you to watch a movie, My Fair Lady, based on that particular drama. That how a flower girl can be converted into a duchess because of her pronunciation. Right? Sociolinguistics. Think about the people around you. Think about the area where you live. If you already live in the posh area where the school or where the children go to change schools, think about the English they speak, and then think about the English of those children who go to government-run schools or public schools. Think about the schools which are in the rural areas of Punjab or maybe Pakistan. Now think about the English the children of those schools speak. You can understand the difference in between the English spoken by those children and the English spoken by the children who go to chained schools. That's why I'm talking about at another extreme, phonology shades into sociolinguistics as we consider social attitudes to features of sound such as accent and intonation. So what I told you, that accent varies. There are certain factors contribute in the making of accent. Even if you go to England, the accent of the people varies. A person living in London has got different accent. A person living in Pontypridd or Liverpool or some other areas, maybe he or she has got another accent. Depends upon the environment. All right? And then the second statement is, and part of the subject is concerned with finding objective standard ways of recording speech and representing this symbolically. And part of the subject is concerned with finding objective standard ways, subjective standard ways of recording speech and representing this symbolically. What happens? Part of the subject is concerned with finding objective standard ways. How? How can we find the standard ways? Objective standard ways. How can we find objective standard ways of recording speech? Now what happens when we record the speech? What happens that we have got variety. If I start recording the speech of my students, for example your class, separately on a given issue or a given topic, right? What happens? If this is a 5-minute speech, for instance, I can understand the variation. This is what I'm talking about, sociolinguistics role, environments, different environments. That means when you are speaking, you are also reflecting, not consciously, but unconsciously, the environment, your social environment in which you lived, in which you were brought up, and certain processes work on your accent. Alright? So this is what in fact phonology tells us. But remember, whatever we have discussed so far, there are certain points you must understand. And what are those points you need to understand? That we usually take for granted our ability to produce and understand speech and give little thought to its nature and function, just as we are not particularly aware of the action of our hearts, brains, or other essential organs. Now that's very important. I still remember when I picked up the area, and the area was the role of other branches or the systems inside our body in the production of speech sounds. I talked about physics, physiology, anatomy, anthropology, pathology, history. Do you remember? Yes, and neurology at the same time. What happens? We are all the time taking for granted the ability which we have to produce and understand speech and its nature. Similarly, we are not aware of the functions of our hearts or the brains or other organs. How many of us, by the way, understand the function of our heart? All right, this is what we learned when we were SSC student or intermediate. But what about the people who are all the time speaking and they never went to school, for example? They simply know what you know, that it pumps, the heart pumps, the blood, sends the blood somewhere else to other organs or brains. How many of us, by the way, understand the working of brain? Are we aware? There are certain people, maybe some people, it is possible some of you understand the working of brain, but in fact most of the time we are not aware. That is what happens to us because we take the ability to produce and understand speech for granted and give little thought to its nature. It's the wonderful ability nature has given to us to produce and understand speech. Definitely, whatever the language we are speaking. And we have had discussion on this time and again. Then, if you understand this, it is not surprising, therefore, that many people overlook the great influence of speech in the development and functioning of human society. Always remember that speech, in fact, contributes a lot. It really contributes a lot to the development and functioning of human society. I use the term posh English, and if I use the term posh Urdu, and if I use the term posh Punjabi, these are my own terms, in fact, right? These are my own terms. What I am saying, what about Urdu? If I call posh Urdu, which contains sobriety, humility, proper intonation, I mean in the sense whatever the intonation is required in Urdu, whatever, I am not saying its intonation, but whatever, production of speech sounds, right, rise and fall, and then understanding how one speech sound is used in one word, in one phrase, in one sentence, and then your tone. Many factors are there. Don't you think that it can develop people's attitude? It can generate some sort of patience among the people. If you're speaking harsh Urdu, right, don't you think it has got its own effects? So that's why I'm saying that it's not surprising that many people overlook the great influence of speech on the development and functioning of human society. Always remember, we overlook because we never try to give emphasis on this particular part of phonology. That's why I'm saying that these are the points you must understand. Okay? Well, I want you to think. Think about what? Think about that whenever human beings live together, they develop a system of talking to each other. Even people in the most isolated societies use speech, isn't it? So we cannot live without speech. Wherever we are living, whatever the society we are in, whatever the place we are living, whatever the environment we are living in, always remember that we start developing a system of talking to each other. It is not possible for human beings not to talk to the other human beings. It is not possible. If you, for example, go to the far, far away jungles of the world and you find some human beings there, maybe a tribe, a very small tribe, remember there is some sort of speech mechanism they have. Whatever the society, you can call it a small society, but it is a society. So they have developed some sort of system so that they can talk to each other or to one another. That's a very important point to understand. So speech, in fact, is one of the few basic abilities, or tool making is another, that set us apart from other animals and are closely connected with our ability to think abstractly. Right? Think abstractly. So what is the ability, in fact? Speech is the ability. And this is one of the basic, some of the few basic abilities. Right? And of course, it distinguishes us from the rest of the species or other animals. That we think abstractly. Think about intonation. Think about stress. Features of pronunciation. Suprasegmentals. Prosody. We are all the time engaged in conveying messages. Do you remember a sample sentence? She is a good lawyer. Or Sam got an A in calculus. A simple declarative statement can be given certain meanings. But how can we give different meanings to one sentence? This is what to think abstractly. Okay? So the message is in the mind of the speaker, and the speaker wants to communicate to the audience. Now he or she is engaged in what? In rise and fall. Rise or fall of what? Tone. Rising tones and falling tones. Stress. Syllable stress. Okay? Stress time language. I'm talking about English, which I told you, stress time language. And do you remember the slide containing the rhythm of two languages? One is the Chinese, the other one is English. Rise and falls, the prominent features of English language. Always remember. Now, whenever we are engaged and we want to convey, for example, our emotions, okay? If I say a sentence, now listen to me carefully. I respect you. Do you think I am conveying exactly what you are listening? No, not at all. I am in fact conveying my message, and message is my anger. This kind of presentation of this sentence does not mean that I really respect the person whom I'm talking. Rather, I am sending or conveying my anger to him or her. But at the same time, if I say, I respect you, again the meanings are different. And if I say I respect you, it is possible the meanings are different. That means I am only respecting you. I am not concerned with the people you have or who are with you. I am not respecting them. I do not respect them. I only respect you. So what I am trying to tell you is that it is the ability to think abstractly that makes a difference in between the animals and human beings, right? And I hope you must have read about what is language in your semester number 1, or maybe in the same semester, maybe some of the teachers have picked it up. Now, what are the characteristics of language? Human language, of course. Displacement. Alright? Displacement. So maybe it is possible that I am talking to you and I am talking about future. Are you getting the point? So this is what we call creativity. Again, that is one of the other characteristics of language. So speech, in fact, is one of the few basic abilities, or tool making is another, that set us apart from other animals and are closely connected with our ability to think abstractly. That's very important to understand. Okay? Now let's talk about the physics and physiology of speech. My dear students, remember, man is distinguished from the other primates by having the apparatus to make the sound of speech. Right, it's very important to understand. This is what I was talking about in the previous slide when I was just trying to understand the ability, the human ability, or the basic one of the basic abilities. Now, it is very important to understand that we have got the apparatus, sound making apparatus. Do you remember? Yes, exactly. When this term, first of all, I asked you to stop and I asked you to think about sound making apparatus. Now this man is different because of what? From the rest of the species, man is different. Why? Because of this sound making apparatus. Because we can produce meaningful speech sounds. Meaningful speech sound. That's very important to understand. Now you can bring acoustic phonetics here. Do you remember I said not all sounds but speech sounds? This time, for example, it is possible when you are listening to me, at the same time you are hearing some other sounds. Maybe the chirping of the birds, the voice or the noise of your fan, but they are not meaningful. What I am saying, or the sounds I am producing, that is meaningful, or those are more meaningful. So the other species, they do not have that quality. They don't have that kind of sound making apparatus as we have. We can mold unconsciously our speech organs to produce some distinguished phoneme or sound. So remember, of course, most of us learn to speak without ever knowing much about these organs. This is what I told you many a time. We do not know the working of this. Most of us do not know. Now let's compare a student of BS English or MA English who is having this course, Phonetics and Phonology. Let's compare him or her with a student who is doing BS or MS or MSc in chemistry or biology or IT, whatever. Do you think that he or she knows much about the role of organs of speech? Or you? Definitely you, because you have read it, you have learnt it. Formally you were told by your instructor. Okay? I repeat, of course most of us learn to speak without ever knowing much about these organs, save in a vague and general sense, so that we know how a cold or sore throat alters our own performance. Now that's very important to understand. We do not know, most of us do not know, what is the role played by speech organs. And I was saying that if you compare yourself with any other graduate whose major is not English, So, do you think that he or she knows better than you so far as the role of speech organs is concerned? Or different roles of speech organs are concerned? Yes, surely not. It is possible some of them, or maybe few of them, or maybe somebody among them, he or she tries, or he or she has got the interest to understand what is the role played by speech organs. But remember, in most of the cases, it is not possible. I'm talking about university graduates. I'm not talking about laymen. I'm not talking about a common man who's got nothing to do with the role of speech organs, or there is some sort of contribution of speech organs. You can ask any layman, how speech occurs? The answer is that we speak with tongue. That's very simple. There is no more answer. Even the university graduate whose major is not English, if you ask, can you tell me what is the role of speech organs? Maybe he or she can tell you, all right, our tongue is moving, our tongue is producing these sounds. But in fact, when you are asked, as a student of phonetics and phonology, what is the role of speech organs? So you are in the better position to explain each and everything, isn't it? For example, what happens when you have got sore throat? Right? You are unable to speak. You've got cold and sore throat. What happens to you? You cannot speak it. You cannot speak properly. Because you know, all right, I've got sore throat, I cannot speak properly. I've got cold, I cannot speak properly. Isn't it? It is possible when you are sneezing, you are more concerned about the sounds you are making. You are not, in fact, producing the sounds or the required sounds. This is the quality, isn't it? This is what we say phonetics and phonology, physics and physiology of speech. So, are you getting my point? Good. Well, you already know that language scientists have a very detailed understanding of how the human body produces the sounds of speech. This is what we try to understand, of course, in detail, while we were talking about articulatory phonetics, acoustic phonetics, and auditory phonetics. At the same time, we try to understand the functional aspect of this branch of linguistics. Right? We know that, how the speech sounds are produced, and of course, the language scientists, they have really talked in detail, analyzed in detail that how we produce sounds and what is the mechanism to produce sound. But leaving to one side the vast subject of how we choose particular utterances and identify the sounds we need, we can think rather simply how we use our lungs to breathe out air. Okay? Leaving to one side the vast subject of how we choose particular utterances and identify the sounds we need, we can think rather simply of how we use our lungs to breathe out air, produce vibration in the larynx, and then use our tongue, teeth, and lips to modify the sounds. Now, this is what we already know. Are you getting the point? We know about vibrations. Simply, air mechanism, we know that, all right, the lungs are throwing the air upward. No, that's not the business. We know that what happens after that. We know what is vibration. And then we know that what is the role of tongue, teeth, and lips to modify the sounds. Right? Everything is happening, for example, at larynx. The first processor, it is processing this air stream, of course. Well, what happens at that time? We become conscious. As a student of phonetics and phonology, we know that then there is the role of tongue, teeth, and lips, because they are there to modify the sounds with the help of certain other articulators. For example, the next slide will explain further. Okay? Now look at the main speech organs. There are 11 main speech organs: lips, teeth, alveolar ridge, tongue, larynx, vocal cords, epiglottis, pharynx, soft palate, uvula, and hard palate. Well, when I'm saying, for example, alveolar ridge, you can say, all right, hard palate and soft palate. But remember, they are separate speech organs. They are in the family of alveolar ridge. But remember, they are separate speech organs. This is what you must not forget. On the right side, you can say certain circles are there. Certain circles are there. These circles are primarily presenting before you complete family chart. Okay? For example, alveolar ridge. An alveolar ridge has got two parts, hard palate and soft palate. Then you have got lip, teeth, and then lip. Upper lip, upper teeth, lower teeth, and then lower lip. And then you have got, in the green circle, tongue. You've got tip of the tongue, blade of the tongue, front of the tongue, and back of the tongue. Then you have got vocal folds, larynx. Then you have got another circle reflecting uvula, pharynx, epiglottis, and then larynx, of course. Larynx is where vocal folds are there. And you've got esophagus, the food pipe, and then trachea, the windpipe. And on the top, on the right side, you can see nasal cavity, ending at nostrils. So these are the main speech organs you must remember all the time. And especially, if you look at the circles, right, within the circle you can see that, all right, family is there. So we have main speech organs. What are they? They are lips, teeth, alveolar ridge, tongue, larynx, vocal cords, epiglottis, pharynx, soft palate, uvula, and hard palate. Okay? Now, listen to me carefully. I repeat, the main speech organs. There are 11. There are others, but main speech organs are lips, upper lip and the lower lip, teeth, upper teeth and lower teeth, upper teeth and lower teeth, alveolar ridge, hard palate and soft palate, the parts of alveolar ridge, tongue, tip of the tongue, blade of the tongue, front of the tongue, a back of the tongue, larynx, right close to vocal folds, that area, then vocal cords, then epiglottis, then pharynx, soft palate, part of alveolar ridge, uvula, that's a hanging piece of flesh, and then hard palate, that's again part of alveolar ridge. So these are main speech organs. All right? First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to Spencer Kaufman for this source, for this slide. There are 4 stages of speech production. I'm not talking about communication skill or process. I'm talking about stages of speech production. There are 4 stages of speech production you must remember. As a student of phonology of English, that's the most important part, that we must be knowing what are the 4 stages of speech production. Remember, you cannot say that how much time it takes our brain. I have already talked about this, that the brain is a master. It sends or it directs certain other parts or certain other systems to produce sounds. The first stage in in the speech production is conceptualization. Some sort of concept comes to our mind in the shape of speech sounds. I don't want to say that this much time is so quick that I cannot say that, okay, 10th part of a second, 50 part of the second, or 99 part of the second, or 100 part of the second. No, I cannot say that how much time. But when I'm speaking or you're speaking, what happens? I hope that you must have come across the word or the term extempore, without preparation. Mostly it is pronounced as extempore. Never pronounce this word as extempore. E-X-T-E-M-P-O-R-E. That is extempore, without preparation. If somebody is asked to speak without any preparation, say his own language or her own language, the first language, and the topic is given, maybe the topic is the aftermaths of coronavirus crisis. Without thinking, he or she will be able to speak wonderfully. He or she will be presenting many ideas before us. What could be the possible shape of the world after this crisis is over? The conceptualization is there. So the processor is on. Extemporally the speaker is speaking. Whatever comes to the mind. Why? Because the speaker has got grasp on the sound system or the sound production of his or her own language. Same can happen to any English speaker. If you ask the native speaker, for example, to speak extemporally, he or she will be speaking like that, the way Urdu speaker is doing. So the conceptualization is very important. It depends upon how expert we are, what kind of mastery we have on the speech sounds of the language we have to use. And then we formulate. Then the next step is we formulate conceptualization, and then is the formulation. I'm not talking about production this time. I'm talking about formulation. After conceptualizing the thing, whatever the thing you want to speak on, whatever the topic you want to speak, whatever the area you want to comment on, there is a concept behind that. And the process is known as conceptualization. And then you formulate, and the second stage is formulation. The third stage in the speech production is the articulation. And you know what is articulation? As I told you time and again that articulated phonetics is the most significant area of phonetics. Because we must be knowing what kind of sound I'm speaking, I'm using, I'm producing. Must depends on the articulation of speech sounds. Because the audience is concerned with the reception, what kind of sound he or she is receiving. Are you getting the point? Articulation. I have to speak. And it is not only articulation that I am producing, but at the same time I am concerned with the acoustic phonetics. The second aspect of phonetics. And at the same time I am very much concerned and conscious about the third thing, and that is auditory phonetics. I'm not saying any speaker, he or she first of all knows what is articulative phonetics, what is acoustic phonetics, what is auditory. No, not at all. We're talking about the 4 stages of speech production. Any person can speak. I'm not talking about only the student who is studying phonetics and phonology. This is what I'm talking about generally. That what are the 4 stages required and involved in the speech production. The first one is the conceptualization. The second is the formulation. The third one is the articulation. When you have articulated, remember the 4 stages self-monitoring. Now, you are a student of phonetics and phonology. If I ask you to make a speech of 1 or 2 minutes and then record it, for example, what will you do after this, after the recording of your speech? You are engaged in self-monitoring. It's natural. If you're not supposed to be recording your voice and if you're talking to your instructor in the classroom, remember we are in fact engaged in self-monitoring. We know what kind of sounds we are producing. As a student of phonetics and phonology, you are conscious. But remember, those who are not concerned with phonetics and phonology, they are not concerned with this whether I am producing the right sound or the wrong sound. They are producing the sound, whatever they have heard, whatever they have learned, they are producing those sounds, right? But generally speaking, this is what we say the 4 stages of speech production. One is conceptualization, second is formulation, third is articulation, and fourth is self-monitoring. As a conscious student of phonetics and phonology, remember, we are rather more self-monitored. For example, you might have seen that sometimes when I just produce some sound not properly, I wait and I repeat. So in other words, I would like to say that as students of phonetics and phonology, we are more self-monitored in the sense that we know that what is the conceptualization, what is the formulation, what is the articulation. But generally speaking, that if any speaker who doesn't know what is the mechanism, what is the role of speech organs, he or she is not bothered about the exact production of speech sound. But I think as students of phonetics and phonology, we are rather more concerned about this, because self-monitoring is very much applicable so far as the knowledge or the understanding is concerned. We understand what are these, that's why we are more self-monitored, and I think we should be more self-monitored. Okay? Well, this is what is called speech production. Speech production. Now there are 3 basic components of speech production. This is what you have to remember, and I think I'm repeating it. I think we talked about this in detail in the preceding sessions, but I want you to remember and recall what are the 3 basic components of speech production. Remember, the first one is respiration. The first one is respiration. The second one is phonation. And the third one is articulation. We respire. We are all the time engaged in respiration. We produce sounds and then we articulate them. Right? We know what is the requirement. What is fer, what is ver. What is per, what is ver. What is mer, what is ner. What is thir, what is the. So we in fact articulate them. So the 3 basic components of speech productions are respiration, phonation, and articulation. You must not forget them. Alright? So there are 3 basic components, my dear students, of speech production, and they are respiration, phonation, and articulation. You can see, for example, the diagram is also there to help you. And this presents before you everything. Starting from diaphragm, that is a support for the lungs, right? At close to diaphragm we have got ribs cage. So everything whatever is helping, in fact, in the production of speech sounds. All organs are here. Speech production organs, everything is in front of you. But remember, there are three components. One is respiration, the second is phonation, and the third one is articulation. Well, the most important part, that is the self-assessment, but this time some big task is given to you, and that is that you have to write an assignment, definitely, of round about 24 pages. 1.5 should be the space, and the topic is define and explain in detail phonetics and phonology by adding your understanding of English phonemes. I repeat, define and explain in detail phonetics and phonology by adding your understanding of English phonemes. Remember, you're free to send me through email, online, the way you like. If you want to type it, definitely you have to type it. At least 24 pages are required. It is possible there is variation in the presentation of the material which is associated with the question. But afterwards, at the end of the assignment, remember, you must give references. As I am giving references, if there is a slide, for example, I just acknowledge the source. I say my thanks to the source. I extend my courtesy. And when I shall be, inshallah, presenting the last session, I shall definitely mention each and every source, every book, every source, whatever it is, right? So it is very important that you have to refer to the sources at the same time when you're writing assignment. I want you to write a detailed assignment, and it is define and explain in detail phonetics and phonology by adding your understanding of English phonemes. Remember, it is not only 1 page or 2 pages assignment. You're required to write, you're required to produce at least 24 pages. Is it clear? So thank you very much for today's session. From my side, goodbye and good luck. Stay blessed.